I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Well, friends, this time of year is gonna be really special because it's my very first Halloween season here in my own apartment. And to start off this year's Nightmare Month, I want to talk about movie musicals again. Now, if you may recall, over the years, I blogged a few movie musicals which were sort of related to the Halloween season. Those being Repo the Genetic Opera, Little Shop of Horrors, Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, and The Phantom of the Opera. However, for a few months now, ever since August, I've been thinking about blogging a really over-the-top and horrific movie musical from the 1970s. The question is, does it still hold up today? And does it make a worthy film to watch during this spooky season? Well, let's take a look and find out. Released on September 26, 1975, the movie is The Rocky Horror Picture Show. And now, on for the plot of the movie. The story follows engaged sweethearts Brad and Janet, who after getting stuck with a flat tire during a storm, discover an eerie mansion and home of the mad Dr. Frank-N-Furter, a transvestite scientist. As their innocence is lost, Brad and Janet meet a house full of wild characters, including a rocking biker and a creepy butler. Through elaborate dances and rock songs, Frank-N-Furter unveils his latest creation, a muscular man named Rocky Horror. So, what are my thoughts? Well, like Repo, this is not a family-friendly film. There's some crude humor, adult profanity, and sexual innuendo. But, at the same time, I love every minute of it. And to further explain why I love this movie, let's move on to Mustang Notes. The film is based on the 1973 musical stage production of the same name, with the music, book, and lyrics by Richard O'Brien. The production is a tribute to the science fiction and horror B-movies of the 1930s through to the early 1960s, with cast members from the original Royal Court Theatre, Roxy Theatre, and Belasco Theatre productions. In the director's chair was Jim Sharman, who wrote and directed the original stage version in London, along with more than 70 other productions to his credit. And the film's producers were Lou Adler and the late Michael White. The film was shot in the United Kingdom at Bray Studios and on location at an old country estate named Oakley Court, best known for its earlier use by Hammer Films Productions. A number of props and set pics were reused from the Hammer horror films. Although the film is both a parody and a tribute to many kitsch science fiction and horror films, costume designer Sue Blaine conducted no research for her designs. Blaine had claimed that her creations for the film directly affected the development of punk rock fashion trends, such as torn fishnet stockings and colorfully dyed hair. Initial reception was extremely negative, but it soon became a massive hit as a midnight movie when audiences began participating with the film at the Waverly Theater, aka the IFC Center in New York City in 1976. Audience members returned to the cinema frequently and talked back to the screen and began dressing as the characters, spawning similar performance groups across the United States. At almost the same time, fans in costume at the King's Court Theater in Pittsburgh began performing alongside the film. This shadow cast mimed the actions on screen above and behind them while lip-syncing their characters' lines. Still in limited release in 2023, some 48 years after its premiere, Rocky Horror Picture Show is the longest-running theatrical release in film history. In many cities, live amateur shadow casts act out the film, as it is being shown and heavily drawn upon a tradition of audience participation. Today, the film has a large international cult following and has been considered by many as one of the greatest musical films of all time. In 2005, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or authentically significant. Now, firstly, the reason why I think Rocky Horror Picture Show is a worthy film to watch during the Halloween season is for two reasons. One, the film is most often shown close to Halloween. And two, this film is a Frankenstein adaptation, kind of like Reanimator, along with Weird Science, Young Frankenstein by Mel Brooks, Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands, and Frankenweenie, both versions. Plus, this film inspired a couple costumes that were worn in Rob Zombie's trashy and messy Halloween 2 movie from 2009. Also, remember when I mentioned that Rocky Horror Picture Show had shadow cast lately? Well, believe it or not, my goddaughter / cousin Elizabeth Ann Preschelt got to participate in one of these last year at Chapman University. Now, even though I never got the chance to witness it, I'm sure it must have been a really wild experience for her. Anyway, I didn't start watching the movie until October 2011, after hearing several video comments from other reviewers such as Huey Toonmore, South Jersey Sam, Morgan Ledger, aka The Film Buff, VG Retro, even Doug Walker, the Nostalgia Critic. And after my first experience watching it on DVD, despite some things that make me feel a bit uncomfortable, like the sexual innuendo, it was absolutely incredible. And I like that most of the film's story takes place at Dr. Frank-N-Furter's castle, mainly due to its Victorian Gothic style. And I thought it was pretty twisted when it's later revealed to be a huge spaceship. Speaking of which, nowadays, Frank's castle wouldn't be the only building that would come from space, believe me. Also to note, I think Frank-N-Furter's lab, being all salmon-colored, seems kind of fitting for his personality. Plus, I think the songs featured in this movie are absolutely fantastic to listen to, due to them paying homage to the punk rock period. Some of the most memorable songs, in my opinion, include the opening credits song, Science Fiction / Double Feature, which consists of Patricia Quinn's lips and has the vocals of Rocky Horror creator Richard O'Brien. And to me, this song has such a sweet and manipulative rhythm, and it's also pretty interesting due to it referencing films like The Day the Earth Stood Still, Flash Gordon, The Invisible Man, King Kong, It Came from Outer Space, Dr. X, Forbidden Planet, Tarantula, The Day of the Triffids, Curse of the Demon, and When Worlds Collide. There's also the romance song, Damn It Janet, where Brad and Janet become an engaged couple, the Time Warp song, sung by Riff Raff, Magenta, The Criminologist, Columbia, and the Transylvanians, which happens to be one of my favorite Halloween dance songs, the villain song, Sweet Transvestite, where we are introduced to Dr. Frank-N-Furter, Hopatootie, sung by Eddie, played by the late and underrated Meatloaf, and Wild and Untamed Thing. So, now that we got Mustang notes and songs out of the way, let's move on to the cast. Let's start with our two main characters, Brad Majors and his fiancée Janet Weiss, played by Barry Bostwick and Susan Sarandon. Brad is an average and stereotypical 1950s era man, and Janet is a timid, innocent, and shy woman. Not long after becoming an engaged couple and getting a flat tire, they come across Dr. Frank-N-Furter's castle in hopes to use a telephone to call for help. And throughout the film, they hope to escape with their relation and sanity intact. Next we come to the film's main villain and star, Dr. Frank-N-Furter, played by the legendary Tim Curry, whom was in Annie from 1982, Oliver Twist, also in 1982, the 1990 It miniseries, Ferngully the Last Rainforest, Muppet Treasure Island, Beauty and the Beast, The Enchanted Christmas, Bartok the Magnificent, The Cat Returns, the Wild Thornberrys series, 2005's Valiant, along with Dr. Seuss's Daisy Head Maisie, The Little Mermaid TV series, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, and the extinct extraterrestrial alien encounter at the Magic Kingdom. Now, to be perfectly honest, folks, Tim Curry is my reason for starting off Nightmare Month with this movie. Why? Well, it's because back in August, I got to have a video chat with him via GalaxyCon, making Tim Curry the third actor I got to meet online, the previous two being Jodie Benson and Tara Strong. By the way, I was originally gonna meet Paige O'Hara earlier this year, but it was sadly canceled because of COVID-19 dying, which was influencing tons of people to go back to seeing these celebrities in person, which was both great but also disappointing. And I just hope that I can get another chance to meet Paige someday. Anyway, while it was awesome to meet Tim Curry, at the same time, I felt really bad for him due to him going through a stroke since 2012, and I'm glad that I didn't talk about it during my 2-minute chat, and I kept it to myself. As for his acting in this film, I thought Tim did awesome for his first film role after his first 7 years on stage. And believe me, Tim actually told me that acting on screen felt like a really different experience for him than acting on stage. His role as Frank-N-Furter is a mad scientist, the leader of the Transylvanians on Earth, and a smooth-talking cross-dresser who's bent on creating the perfect life form to serve as his sexual plaything. Plus, Frank is mainly concerned with himself, and he lacks the ability to see the consequences of his behavior. In my opinion, while Frank is very charming, charismatic, and seductive, he's also prone to jealousy, homicide, and overwhelming promiscuity. And I thought his most despicable moment was when he uses his Medusa transducer to turn Dr. Scott, Brad, Janet, Rocky, and Columbia into nude statues, has them dressed in cabaret costumes, and leads them in a live cabaret floor show. Overall, Frank is an incredibly persuasive man with a knowledge high enough to create life itself. As for the other characters, we have Riff Raff and his sister Magenta, played by the show's creator and the film's screenwriter Richard O'Brien and Patricia Quinn. Riff is the hunchbacked handyman and Magenta is the castle maid. To me, I find these two to be the most memorable characters in the entire film next to Dr. Frank-N-Furter. While they are a bit eccentric and weird, at the same time, they're not really as villainous as their master, due to them conspiring to overthrow and kill him, and afterwards return back to their home planet. We also have Columbia, played by Little Nell. This character is a groupie and Frank-N-Furter's lover until he changed her for the delivery boy, Eddie, whose rebellious personality made Columbia fall in love with him until he was assassinated by Frank with an ice axe. Also, Columbia is one of Frank's servants along with Riff Raff and Magenta. And in my eyes, I find her to be the most bubbliest out of the three. And I think her outfit is very flashy. But Columbia also becomes jealous due to Frank showing more attraction to his creation. Next on our list is Dr. Everett V. Scott, played by the late Jonathan Adams. Dr. Scott was a teacher who taught science at Denton High School during the time when Brad and Janet were students. Following his teaching position, Scott worked for the U.S. government as part of the Bureau of Investigation of UFOs. He also happens to be the uncle of delivery boy Eddie, and he was the person whom Brad and Janet were going to see earlier in the film to celebrate their engagement before their car's tire blew out. Next we come to Frank-N-Furter's creation and the title character, Rocky Horror, played by Peter Hindwood. Now, as we all know, Rocky is a parody of Frankenstein's monster. However, unlike that creation, which was an abnormal and freaky looking person made from sewn together stolen body parts and brought to life through electricity, in this version, Rocky is a tall, muscular, handsome blonde man made from Eddie's brain and brought to life with rainbow watercoloring and a solar light. The last character to talk about is the film's narrator, the criminologist, played by the late Charles Gray. Now this character is based on British broadcaster and crime writer Edgar Lustgarten. In my opinion, while he is a minor character, I also find him to be a pretty interesting guy, due to him being an expert. He sings in a couple songs like The Time Warp, and he tells the story of Brad and Janet to the audience, which almost makes me think of the man in the chair from The Drowsy Chaperone. And now on to my final words. Overall, the Rocky Horror Picture Show has got to be one of the greatest movie musicals ever made. It has great cinematography, it makes an amazing tribute to classic horror and sci-fi, plus it has wild and over-the-top characters with a couple sympathetic main characters. Also, the choreography is fantastic and the songs are awesome to listen to. Also, this is a film that I wouldn't recommend for anybody under the age of 17 due to its use of adult humor, suggestiveness, and sexual innuendo. Also, like I said earlier, I am disappointed to have missed out on my goddaughter and her class doing their shadow cast version of the show last year, and that my friends at Musical Theater Village can never do a show like this because it's a family-friendly community theater. But I do hope that someday I can actually see a stage production of Rocky Horror Picture Show for myself. And if so, I pray that I'll have a blast like most audiences did. Anyway, I give this film the highest rating of 100%. Well, that's all for now, everybody. Be sure to join me next time where we look at another Frankenstein-related film, which centers on Mickey Mouse. Mustang Power.
Ooh.